Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be recapping my month of July 2024. We're going to be discussing what books I read. I read 12 in the month of July and how I felt on reading. As always, I also want to hear about what you're reading, how you're feeling on reading. I know some of you might be on summer break from college, so maybe you have more time, while others of you might be dealing with kids at home for the school year, so you have less time. So let me know how your July went for reading, what you read, what you are enjoying, and what you want to read this coming August. Let's dive in and talk about my July. So 12 books, these range from 3 to 5 stars. And I have to say right off the bat, this was a very, very slow reading month for me. I wanted to use the word weak, but I don't really characterize myself like that. It wasn't a weak reading month. I just had other activities that I want to do. I live in a part of the world where it gets cold for a good portion of the year and it gets dark early and I don't want to go outside, and those are fantastic reading months. But when we have a month that is warm, that is comfortable to be outside, where I want to go swimming and take road trips and travel, that's what I focus on doing. So in July, I did a lot of my other hobbies and activities that I like doing, and I didn't really focus on reading as much. The books I did read tended to be shorter, they tended to be lighter. There was a lot of manga where I would read 3 or 4 on one weekend day, and there would be 5 or 6 days in a row where I didn't read. So I read quite a bit less than normal, and what I did read tended to be a lot lighter, if that makes sense. I read, again, a lot of manga, some shorter books, and I really also focused on medieval books and books that discuss medieval culture and art in the Middle Ages. I read 8 fiction books and 4 non-fiction books, so heavily weighted towards fiction, and I think that had to do a lot with the manga that I read. So let's talk about the fiction that I read and what I thought about them, then moving into the non-fiction. All of these are going to be reviewed on my channel, so if you're interested in looking at my review of these, then you can find the link for those in the comment section down below, which I will post a few minutes after posting this video. Fiction. The first 4 books I would say I read, or the first 4 books I'm going to talk about, was a reread for me, actually. It was the manga series City by Keiichi Araue, who also wrote the Nichijou series. These, actually 1 through 3, were a reread, and these focus on a college student who is trying to make rent and live life in this crazy city created by Keiichi Araue. I love this series. I really like that, unlike Nichijou, which I also really enjoy, it's focused on a slightly older protagonist, and I, as an adult, tend to find myself gravitating more towards those stories that focus on an adult protagonist versus a school-age protagonist, which could be an enjoyable story or super funny. Again, I love Nichijou, but I don't relate to being 14 anymore as much, although I can remember what it's like being 14. It's not quite as relatable of an experience, while being a broke college student is a more recent memory and something that I can place myself in quite readily. I love City. Again, volumes 1 through 3 were a reread, but I did get volume 4. The rest of the volumes, there's like 1 copy in my entire state that everyone is trying to get their hands on. I'm gonna have to wait to keep reading this or see if I can request the remaining volumes through my library. The next one was also a manga, and this one was standalone, called See You Tomorrow at the Food Court. This one I really enjoyed as well. I'm trying to find more standalone manga to read. I love getting involved in the series, but the problem with series is there tends to be long wait times as I wait for the next couple volumes to come in on holds at my library, which tends to be a little annoying, and then these series can drag into months or even years reading, which is fine. That's not a bad thing. I recently read Haikyuu, 45 volumes, fantastic. Probably took me over a year to read, but sometimes I just want to read a manga series without committing to a 45 volume series, and that's where things like See You Tomorrow at the Food Court come in. This was just about 2 teenage girls who would meet at the food court after school to talk about life. It was funny, it was short, it was punchy, I enjoyed it. Next was, again, a series. I'm getting sucked into a series, Correspondence from the End of the Universe by Minota. This was volume 1. It's about a college graduate from Russia, again, slightly older protagonist, which I like, who gets sucked into the business of building the universe accidentally. He is on this 10-year contract that he had no idea he was on. He just wants to go back. His plans for after college were traveling the world, and now he can't do this. So it's a push and pull between exploring this alien world that he's been sucked into while also trying to get home to do what he actually wants to do with his life. Enjoyed that one, even though it's a series. I've been sucked into it. Yeah, we're gonna be reading that one. Next was a fantastic find that I didn't plan to read, but I found at the library and read volume 1. This is Ennead by Mojito. It was originally a webtoon or webcomic, and it was turned into a paper volume, so I'm reading it. Loved it. This was Egyptian mythology. It's also labeled as boys love. I'm not entirely sure what is going to go on there. I assume that's where the next couple volumes are going to come in, but loved volume 1, Egyptian mythology story. We have Seth, the god of war, who has taken over the world, and some gods are planning to stop him, including some relatives of him, although it's Egyptian mythology, so everyone's relatives, but whatever. Ennead, very, very, very good. I also love the art. The art was really good. I think it's a standout volume, and I have to put volume 2 on hold. So getting volume 2, we're going to continue reading that series. The final fiction and the only non-manga or comic that I read this month was A Letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Catherall. This was a science fiction-y book set in a complete water world and told through letters. 2 individuals have mysteriously disappeared, and their surviving siblings have pulled their letters together and are putting their letters in order to try to figure out what happened. It is told again entirely through letters. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and I highly recommend checking out my review if that sounds interesting to you. Next, moving into nonfiction. The first one was a book that I had on my to-read list, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I heard Matthew Walker talk on a podcast. I believe it was like the Andrew Huberman podcast, which I sometimes listen to. It's like a health podcast. I listened to him discuss sleep, and I really liked the way he discussed and presented the topic. So I checked out his book, Why We Sleep. Very enjoyable. I like sleep. I enjoy getting my 8 hours every single night. And this book reinforced the idea that I'm doing something good for my health in doing that. So if you have any interest in learning about why we sleep, why sleep is important, what happens when we sleep, and the health benefits of getting enough sleep, I would recommend Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Next up is Scribes and Illuminators by Christopher DeHamel. This was part of the Medieval Craftsman series, which I actually have 2 more books from that series out right now that I'm planning to read in August. This is part of this Medieval Craftsman where the series, excuse me, is focused on medieval craftsmen from the medieval times and their trade. So I've read a lot of books about medieval manuscripts, but none actually focused on the method of building a medieval manuscript from beginning to end, the actual making of the paper and binding the book. And that's what this book discussed. Very, very interesting. About 30 years old, so maybe a little outdated in that sense, but not outdated in the content or the material. It was quite enjoyable, and I have not come across another book like that, so I really do recommend checking out my review of that. The third one, Building the Medieval World by Christine Sayaka. The name is in my book review, so hopefully I can pronounce it correctly there. This was a book in the Medieval Imagination series, which discusses the medieval world through art found in medieval manuscripts. A fantastic series. This one discussed the buildings, and there was more content to that book than I initially expected. I liked the book. I enjoyed it. Someone else had also recommended it in their comment under one of my other videos, so it was also a viewer recommendation. I love getting your recommendations, so I read that one, enjoyed it, great time. The last book, Inanna, Lady of the Largest Heart by Enhe Duwana. I have to mentally prepare to say that name, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. This was a collection of poetry from the Sumerian times regarding Inanna, who is a Sumerian Mesopotamian goddess who goes by many names, and this book was one of the oldest collections oldest pieces of literature known. She's one of the oldest named authors, and she was a high priestess for she was a high priestess in Sumer and was appointed by her father to kind of maintain control. This is Enhe Duwana, and this is a collection of poems that were written by her or believed to be written by her in praise of Inanna. I found it a very enjoyable book, and the person who put this collection together included a lot of text that helped contextualize, context to contextualize what you were reading, so a modern reader could really feel immersed. And it felt quite modern in the sense that it didn't feel so remote and inaccessible despite its age, due to, I think, some of that work done by the compilers who put this book together. So I really do recommend checking that one out if you're interested in ancient history and that sounds interesting to you. Now, my goals for August. For the second half of the year, I really want to focus in on my reading. My to-read list for the year, my goal was to get it below 100, and I'm currently sitting at 231, which is like 40 books more than I started the year with, so I've got to get that under control. Those are all ostensibly books I want to read, so I would like to start getting through them and not putting books on that list, going to the library, getting books that aren't on that list, and then the list just grows. So I would like to focus on those, focus on reading my Hugo Award winners and finalists. Those books can be hard to get a hold of, especially books from the 50s and 60s because of their age, but I am trying my absolute best, placing holds, trying to get them. And reading open series. So series that I've started, particularly manga series, and getting the next couple volumes in those if I can and reading those down. However, I never want reading to feel like a chore. This is just a hobby for me. I don't make any money off reviewing books, and books are just one of my many hobbies that I have in life. So I never want to force myself or penalize myself or make this into a task. This isn't like exercise or cleaning the house or folding my laundry. It's not a chore. It's something I do for fun. So these are my goals, but I'm never going to push myself. I never push myself to hit Goodreads goals or personal goals or anything like that. So we're just going to do my best in August. I do think as the weather cools down moving into September and October, my reading pace will pick up. It's already getting dark later in the evening, so I'm able to read for longer. And overall, yeah, I'm having a great time. I did enjoy July. I didn't get as much read, but I did have a great month of July, and I'm expecting great things in the month of August as well. Let me know what you plan on reading in August, what you read in July, and how you felt about it. Put that in the comment section down below. Put your recommendations in the comment section down below as well, and I will add it to my absolutely massive list. I promise I'm getting to those in the second half of the year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.